What if I told you there was an airplane so advanced that even today, decades later, humanity still hasn't truly replaced it? A jet that could cross the Atlantic faster than the Earth rotates beneath it. A machine so iconic that celebrities, presidents, and millionaires treated it like a flying time machine. Today, we're diving deep into the unbelievable story of the Concorde, the supersonic beast that changed aviation forever. Why was it considered terrifyingly powerful compared to regular airplanes? How was it invented? And what was the real reason governments poured insane amounts of money into creating this flying rocket? Get ready, because this story is absolutely wild. So picture this. Back in the 1950s and 60s, commercial aviation was exploding. Countries were racing to dominate the skies, and everyone wanted the next revolutionary breakthrough. Regular passenger jets were already impressive, but Europe had a much crazier idea. They didn't just want faster travel, they wanted to destroy distance itself. That's when British and French engineers teamed up for one of the boldest engineering projects in history. Their mission was simple on paper, but nearly impossible in reality. Create a passenger aircraft capable of flying faster than the speed of sound. And not for a few seconds, for entire international flights. The aircraft they created became known as the Concorde. And trust me, this thing was basically science fiction brought to life. The Concorde wasn't just another airplane. It was a technological flex aimed directly at the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War era. Countries were competing for global prestige, and aviation became part of that competition. Owning the fastest passenger aircraft on Earth meant power, innovation, and influence. The engineers behind the Concorde had to invent entirely new solutions because no commercial jet had ever attempted anything this extreme before. At full speed, the Concorde cruised at Mach 2, over twice the speed of sound. That's around 2,180 kilometers per hour. To put that into perspective, passengers could leave London after breakfast and land in New York before they technically left due to time zones. Imagine boarding a flight and arriving so quickly it almost felt like teleportation. But reaching those insane speeds created massive problems. The aircraft became so hot during flight that its metal body physically expanded.
The airplane literally became longer while flying. Engineers had to design the aircraft expecting the body to stretch from heat. That sounds fake, but it actually happened every single flight. And then there was the nose. Because the Concorde was designed for supersonic aerodynamics, pilots had terrible visibility during takeoff and landing. So engineers invented a movable nose section that tilted downward. That's why the aircraft had its iconic droop snoot appearance. Even today, it still looks futuristic. But the engines were where the real madness began. The Concorde used 4 Rolls-Royce Olympus turbojet engines that produced unbelievable amounts of power. During takeoff, the noise was so intense that people near airports described it as feeling like an explosion shaking the ground. This wasn't a quiet luxury airliner. It sounded more like a military aircraft preparing for combat. And honestly, that makes sense. A huge amount of Concorde technology was heavily influenced by military aviation research. Delta wings, advanced air intake systems, heat-resistant materials, powerful engine technology. Many of these concepts were connected to fighter jets and Cold War aerospace engineering. In many ways, the Concorde felt like a civilian superweapon disguised as a passenger aircraft. And that's exactly why people found it both beautiful and intimidating. Now, let's talk about the experience of flying on this thing. Because according to passengers, it felt unreal. The Concorde climbed far higher than normal passenger aircraft. While ordinary jets fly around 35,000 feet, the Concorde reached altitudes up to 60,000 feet. At that height, the sky actually looked darker. Some passengers said it felt closer to space travel than normal aviation. And here's the crazy part. Inside the cabin, people barely noticed when the aircraft broke the sound barrier. Imagine casually drinking champagne while secretly traveling faster than a rifle bullet. That's how surreal the Concorde experience was. Passengers weren't just buying transportation. They were buying exclusivity. Flying on Concorde became a status symbol. Celebrities loved it. Millionaires adored it. Business executives planned schedules around it. World leaders used it. Boarding the Concorde felt like entering a private club for the global elite.
Because the Concorde wasn't just fast. It represented something humanity seems to have lost. Back then, engineers dreamed bigger. Governments were willing to spend insane amounts of money just to prove that impossible things could become reality. People genuinely believed the future would be filled with flying cars, moon colonies, and supersonic travel for everyone. And for a brief moment, the Concorde made that future feel real. That's why people still talk about it with almost mythical respect. Not because it was practical, not because it was economical, but because it dared to do something outrageous. Even today, when a Concorde appears in a museum, crowds gather around it like they're staring at alien technology. And honestly, in some ways, they are. Because this aircraft came from a different era. An era where speed mattered more than efficiency. An era where engineers built machines simply because they wanted to prove humanity could. And maybe that's the real reason the Concorde became legendary. It wasn't just transportation. It was ambition turned into metal. A flying symbol of what happens when humans stop thinking about limits. And decades later, we're still chasing the future it promised. Maybe one day humanity will finally build something even greater. Maybe new supersonic jets will return. Maybe airports will once again shake from the roar of engines breaking the sound barrier. But no matter what comes next, the Concorde will always be remembered as the aircraft that arrived too early for its own time. A machine so ambitious that the modern world still struggles to recreate it. And maybe the craziest part of all this is that the Concorde was created using technology from over half a century ago. Think about that for a second. No modern AI, no advanced computer simulations, no ultra-powerful processors. Most of the calculations were done with tools that would look primitive compared to today's technology. Yet somehow, engineers in the 1960s managed to build a passenger aircraft capable of flying faster than sound for hours at a time. That level of engineering feels almost impossible now. In fact, many aviation experts believe recreating the Concorde today would still be incredibly difficult and unbelievably expensive. And that says everything. Because normally, technology gets replaced quickly. Old phones become obsolete, old cars disappear, old computers become useless. But the Concorde? Decades later, it still feels ahead of modern aviation. That's why it continues to dominate documentaries, museums, and conversations online. Because deep down, people don't just miss the airplane. They miss the mindset that created it. The belief that humanity should always push beyond limits. The belief that speed, ambition, and innovation mattered more than playing it safe. And honestly, maybe that's the real reason the Concorde became immortal. Not because it flew faster than sound, but because it reminded the world what human beings are capable of when they dare to dream bigger than everyone else.